Welcome to Wednesday night through the black. Vicky is here and Greg is back. Hey, I did that on purpose. How you guys doing?
Good.
Awesome.
Hey guys, we have got an interesting show tonight. So go tell your neighbors, go tell your mother-in-law, go tell your aunt and uncle, anybody else. Let them know. Through the Black is live right now. We got Greg Reid and Vicky. And we're going to get into some stuff tonight, response to a recent interview that I was kind of surprised to see. But before we do that, we want to do a couple plugs, okay? First of all, there's a conference coming up just in a few weeks. Greg, you're going to be at this conference, Combating Human Trafficking. And where's this going to be? St. Louis area?
St. Louis, yes.
Oh, hey, that's my neck of the woods, sort of.
Come on down.
Yeah.
So, Greg, you're going to be there. You got some friends. Super cool. If anybody wants to just, go back, I think we got the link in the show notes that you guys can check out, but you can do a freeze frame of this little slide right here and get all the info that you need. Hey, this is coming up in a few weeks, and Greg is going to be in the St. Louis area. And everybody's always, where's Greg going to be? Where's Greg going to be? We're telling you where Greg's going to be. He's here right now, and he's going to be in St. Louis in a few weeks. So don't miss it, especially if you're, right there. When you're in St. Louis, you're bordering all of these states, right? You've got Kentucky, you've got Illinois, you're in Missouri, okay? There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of states that you can travel from to get there. So check that out. So, hey, also, I want to mention a couple things, and we're just going to mention them in passing tonight, okay? One super cool thing is my son, Gavin, spent the summer in Columbus, with Created Equal, and he did outreach and ministry, and man, he came up to me Saturday morning, and he told me that he said, do you remember this person that I told you about that I got to witness to down in Columbus? And I said, yeah. He said, well, I just got a message from her and she's going to keep her baby. So that's amazing news.
Wow.
A life has been saved. And we're going to get more information about this and let people know how they can help this girl out, because she is really struggling right now, and she has several kids. And this was a difficult decision for her to make, but she was in the right place at the right time. And this is just an amazing praise. So we want to praise God for that. And then I want to tell you about something else that's going on in my city, okay? So this is going to be confusing, guys. Try to hang on, because I'm going to tell this story quick because we got some things to do here, okay? But a friend of mine is renting a house for ministry from a local church, and the house sits right next to the church. So the pastor of that church retired, and they sent in a new pastor, an interim pastor, to kind of cover the time until they find a new pastor, okay? And this interim pastor called a meeting with my friend because he has one of these signs here in the yard of the house. And it says, no more dead babies. And this interim pastor, he said, hey, what's up with that sign? And it's a true story. He told me about it today. And he said, well, that's a pro-life sign. We're against abortion. And that pastor said, take it down. He said, I'm a volunteer for Planned Parenthood, and I'm an advocate for the LGBTQ. And I want to let you know exactly where I'm coming from. So, needless to say, my friend, who has a powerful ministry in the city of Mansfield, has got an interesting, encounter on his hands. That's what's happening. So, hey, we're getting censored by a so-called pastor. So I want to let you know, nomoredeadbabies.com is the website where you can get these free t-shirts. How long will they be free? I don't know, but they're free right now, and you have to pay shipping. Yes, there you go. So if you go on there and you want to wear one of those shirts and wear it in defiance of imposter pastors, and then also wear it in defense of babies that are being killed. Okay. Yes, Roe was overturned, but that was only the beginning. So yeah, folks, this is a campaign that we started almost a year ago, probably started in December, and we've been giving out hundreds of shirts. We want to give out hundreds of more. It's not just about wearing a shirt, but it's about prayer. It's about activism. It's about learning how to defend life. So if you go to that website, you'll see there's a place where you can click and you can watch some videos and you can learn some basic things on how to defend life. Yeah. So yeah, and all that's on there just to kind of get you started. And we're trying to, add some more stuff to this website, but we don't want to overload people. We want to do a lot more with this campaign, but some really great things have been happening. And I just want to let you guys know about it. NoMoreDeadBabies.com. Join us, okay? And when you wear one of these shirts, I'm telling you, it's exciting. When you wear it out to the grocery store, when you wear it out wherever, it's exciting to see what's going to happen. Usually the people that don't like it, they won't say anything. Okay. And if they do, then hey, that's even more fun. But the people, usually the people that like it, they're the ones that speak up and they're like, man, I like that shirt. Thank you for wearing that shirt. Where did you get that shirt at? Then you can let them know. Folks, we want to get more shirts. We want to get more signs and get them out to people. We want to spread this campaign and rescue babies. Okay. So if anybody wants to donate to this campaign, you can do it as well on that website. That helps us get out these shirts for free. So anyway, folks, I'm done with that. We'll talk more about it later on, but I needed to throw it in there. Awesome things are happening. Thank you for supporting Through the Black and praying for us. We need it. Lots of cool things happening that we'll be telling you about in the coming weeks. So Greg, again, thank you for joining us. It's been a while since we've had you on. And when we got the idea to do this show, I immediately sent you a message and said, hey, let's do this. And I knew you would be on board. And I was right again. So,
well, I'm glad I got to do it. And I've already taken my blood pressure medication, which helps after what you just told me about that pastor. So I'm good to go.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? So my friend is renting this house from this church, and we're kind of rejoicing today that this happened because it exposed this guy, and we're like, okay, cool. We want to know about this. We want to know about this creep doing this. So we're gonna take it head on in Jesus' name and deal with this. And we don't know what we're gonna get into, but it's gonna be a battle because I have a feeling this guy's not gonna back down. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah. Kind of crazy. Anyway, Vic, we've been kind of texting back and forth about this recent news story, and it's very relevant. Mariah Carey, can you just kind of bring us up to date? Mariah Carey, the pop singer, the one with the very high voice, okay? She's got like 2 songs I like, if I'm going to be 100% honest. It's not like admitting that you like, Air Supply or something like that. You shouldn't do that out in public.
I thought you were gonna drop another. She's no Taylor Swift.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other thing. But can you bring us up to date what's going on? Because I've heard about this years ago, and then I kind of forgot about it until recently. So what's going on?
Yeah, so I haven't done tons and tons of research on this by any means. I just was scrolling past it. And I have in the past, I know there's a lot of controversy and childhood trauma and dysfunction in the Carey household because Mariah has talked about it off and on through the years. And there was lots of stories many years ago where the sister was upset, and I guess she was homeless and was not looking too good. And there was a lot of animosity between the 2 sisters. And, things like that, you hear stuff like that maybe 20 years ago, and you hear one thing, and then then you know the things that we know, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this has all the earmarks. Well, so the sister has come out and spoken very matter-of-factly about being taken to satanic rituals as a child and abuse, and like painting the scenario that we've heard a million times. And obviously she's speaking with some sort of knowledge that she either is telling the truth, she got the knowledge firsthand, or she just knows her stuff. But anyway, I saw a bunch of things in Instagram yesterday, and I'm like, well, why is this in the news all of a sudden? And discovered that both Mariah Carey's mother and sister passed away on the same day a couple days ago. And today, again, I didn't really look into it too much, but like I saw one post where they were doing all the numerology about, it's been this many days since the institution of, what is it, the Skull and Bones fraternity, and these are the sacrifices. And so, there's people that are speculating now as to, anytime you've got family members dying on the same day and they're not necessarily in the same car or the same place, that's a little strange. The same thing happened with, wasn't it Debbie Reynolds, and then Carrie Fisher died a couple days later. We had that one. And so anyway, so what's interesting to me, and it kind of shows where we are as a culture right now, how far we've come since the 80s. And we're going to be talking, I think, a little bit tonight about the satanic panic, quote unquote. I think we've come ahead a little bit in this, because the people that are posting about Mariah Carey's mother and sister being gone are synonymously within the same post referring back to those allegations that her sister had made years ago about the satanic ritual abuse. So I think at least people are more privy to, or maybe, I guess, maybe Greg might have a different opinion. Maybe people are starting to believe that this is more true than we've been told.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Greg. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think we have an opportunity now for those of us who have been down the road to confront the lies and say, you can cry satanic panic all you want. And certainly there were false allegations. We all know that. Everybody needs a few straw men if they're going to conduct a good war. But the fact is we were there. We saw this stuff. We worked with the victims. And even something like Mariah Carey, I don't know the full story, but I know when she first got popular, and I sent Tom the pictures. You got the, her with the monarch butterfly, and that's when we had just discovered monarch programming, which everybody's talking about now. But back then, it's like, what in the world is this? So I think it's helped us to have previous experience that flies in the face of present misinformation.
Yeah, amen. There was also, I don't know the timing, it might have been in the 90s, there was a widely publicized breakdown, like a nervous breakdown type of a thing that Mariah Carey went through. And that seemed to be somewhat indicative of the timing of when programming breaks down. And of course, the multi-millionaire, billionaire husband and all that stuff. It really did have all of the earmarks, if you know what to look for.
Similar to Kanye in many ways.
Yes. Yeah. Britney.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of interesting that, a couple of the, the people that we're mentioning here, Kanye, Britney, their breakdowns just scream of some kind of mind control type of thing that happened to them. That there's a video somewhere of Michael Jackson doing a rehearsal or a stage, and he's calling out the husband of Mariah Carey.
Yes.
At some point.
And
so what's going on? Okay. I mean, the pieces, are all out there. We don't have all the pieces, but then, in this same puzzle, it's Harvey Weinstein. It's, all of these other celebrities, Epstein, the connections, the abuse. Corey Feldman is in there, you know, and on and on and on and on. It's been an interesting 15 years. For me, this is when I really got deep. It's a little bit longer than that, but right around 15 years ago is when I started to get real deep in this. And we used to pray, Lord, expose these things. And we've seen a lot of exposure.
And I'm sure more to come at some point. I mean,
yes.
one of the people that is very dear to me that passed away, Lauren Stratford, that she was the most vilified person in the satanic ritual abuse circles. And they eventually just destroyed her. But we had a lot of conversations, and a lot that I'm still going through all the emails. But at one point, she was contacted by one of the top musicians in this country. Everybody would know her name. I'm not at liberty to tell her name on air, but she contacted Lauren because she had been through all of that ritual abuse stuff in another country. And she actually did a whole album where several of the songs on there were very clear about what it was like to go through those things. And unless you understood the code, you'd probably think this person lost their mind or something, or that they had just gone off the deep end. But it's just so tied into so many things we don't know.
Sometimes it makes you feel like everybody's controlled. I don't believe every single person is controlled, but man, they've got a lot of those strings tied up, don't they? A lot of those puppet strings. And the thing is, when somebody goes in that's not controlled, it's a matter of time before they are. It's kind of cool because with some of the political things that are happening, we're seeing different celebrities kind of come out and blow the whistle. An example would be somebody like Jamie Kennedy. Okay. He's been making a lot of videos just kind of calling out, the things that he sees. There's other people as well. And that stuff is out there. So once again, we're vindicated. People say that we're crazy. Doesn't mean that we're not, but hey, we were right about a lot of these things. So anyway, guys, we're gonna get into this. This is about Satanic Panic tonight, and we're gonna respond to an interview from somebody that was in, just right in the heart of it on all the talk shows and stuff. And they did an interview recently. But before we do that, I don't want to wait till the end of the show before we plug websites and books. We'll do it then too. But Greg, Vicki, both of you guys are authors. You have books. Can you just give just a real quick, and Vic, I know you have like an anniversary of a book. Mm-hmm. And Greg's got a new book out. So Vic, just let us know what you got, how people can find it. The links will be in the show notes.
Cool. So, yeah, thank you. So Vicki Joy Anderson is my website. Most people know about that. Vicki Joy Author, Instagram. Love hearing from people on there. And one thing that is really cool, Tom, and I don't know if we've talked about this yet, but even just within the last month, the people that have been contacting me are exactly the kind of people I have the heart to be talking to. And I've had some amazing phone calls and got to meet some really great people. And I've learned tons, not only about sleep paralysis and some of this astral stuff and UFO stuff, but also about the ritual abuse. So it's just been such a cool experience. And, you said years ago, Tom, and it kind of scared me at the time, that Russ said, when you start training and learning about this stuff, you don't know anybody that it applies to. But once you learn it and once you're trained and once you're ready, the people, they're coming in droves, Tom, and it's been exciting. But
when you have what they need, they show up.
Yeah, it's just been so humbling. And I get off the phone just jumping around and praying and praising God, because it's just, when you have 30 to 60 minutes to pull a needle out of a haystack, when there could be a million different doors that got opened, and the Holy Spirit just throws it on the table and these people have hope, and it's so awesome. But So everybody knows about the book. They only come out at night. That you can get that on L.A. Marzulli's site. I do have a YouTube channel now. I don't have tons of stuff on there yet. I'll hopefully get that going pretty soon. I think it's just at Vicki Joy Anderson, all in caps. But I do have a 10-year anniversary, hot off the presses. I just got my copy today. This was my very first book that I published in 2014. It's called Harps Unhung, Praising God in the Midst of Captivity. It's all 150 of the Psalms, rewritten in 150 unique styles of poetry. And in addition to the poetry, there's a whole poetry handbook in the back. So all 150 styles of poetry are written in alphabetical order with the poetry form rules for anybody that wants to write their own. But what's really cool about this book, Tom, and the reason why I specifically wanted to share that one with the Through the Black family is a lot of people know my dad. They've gotten to know him through the years, and they love him. They're like, he's adopted so many of you. And so you guys have gotten to know my dad, and you've gotten to see, where I got half my personality from. But my mom was a very, very integral piece of my life from the day I was born. She was my best friend. She was amazing. She was a very unique, quiet individual. She, unfortunately, I took after my dad, not my mom, but she was amazing. And this will be your opportunity to get to know my mom. This is Jeff's wife of 47 years, and my mom, she wrote 75 of these poems. And so her heart for the Lord and her faith really comes through in this book. So if you're interested in knowing the whole Anderson family, you got it right here.
Sweet. No, that's very cool. Very cool. Diary of a Devil Hunter is the newest book. I mean, how much hardcore can you get? Like,
that's metal.
That title. Like, Greg, what are you trying to tell us this book is about?
Puppies and pancakes.
Yeah.
37 years, I think, in the writing since 1989, however many years that has been. I just threw everything into it because I thought, I'm tired of the lies. I don't have all of everything I need to put in, but I need to at least tell what I know, because Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who is one of my favorite people, if anybody has not studied him, you need to, because he really laid out the condition of a country very much like we're in now. And he said the way that we conquer truth is to live not by lies. And so the book is kind of that testament to, you can say what you want about whatever happened, the Satanic Panic era, but I am, and along with a few people that are left, we are living witnesses to that time. So we refuse to support the lies. You can find out, read the book. If you decide none of it's true, then God bless you. Otherwise, I've said what I've said, and I hope it at least becomes some sort of little piece of the history of all this that people can go to as a reference in a time when all you get is the idea that none of it was real. Amazon.com if you're interested.
Awesome. And Greg, all of your link is going to be in the show notes. It's going to point people back to you. And you, I mean, what's the latest on your podcast? Are you still spitting out episodes of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people don't know. I'm just getting up and running after 5 months after a bike accident, starting to put things back together. But we're putting episodes back up. I think we're on episode 82, Extreme Times, Truth in the Shadowlands, going through the individual chapters from my book, War of the Ages, and looking to just really get things kicked into gear. And, I'm looking for a couple of people here locally to help so I can be as professional and awesome as you guys are, because, you guys just do such a great job with what you're doing.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're speaking in St. Louis. And again, I wonder if anybody's coming in late, don't miss that conference. You'll have to rewind back and watch at the beginning. And there's a slide up there. You can check it out. Combating Human Trafficking. So, folks, Greg's got tons of books. Vic's got quite a few books. So check them out, support them. And maybe it's, maybe some of it's not for you, but I guarantee somebody. That's, when it comes to sleep paralysis, when it comes to spiritual warfare like War of the Ages, okay, and the Trojan Church, which are by those two by Greg Reid. So lots of stuff here. Man, it's just super cool, Greg. Can you believe, are we coming up on the 9th year anniversary next year? I could be off of Detestable.
No way.
Yeah.
Big mic drop. I'm out. Bye.
Yeah. So, wow. Anyway.
Wow.
So we're going to take a look at an interview tonight, and we're going to talk about somebody that is just kind of been the face of Satanism for a very long time. And I'm talking about, of course, if anybody sees the thumbnail, Anton Szandor LaVey, author of the Satanic Bible. And he I don't know. I mean, what can we say about this guy? I learned a lot about him recently in an interview that I saw that his daughter Xena recently did. And she gave some insight to another side of him that I really didn't consider. So anyway, we're going to take a look at some excerpts from that interview tonight. But Greg, when I mentioned that name, I know that you've been doing this for a long time. I mean, what are your thoughts when I say Anton LaVey and the Satanic Bible?
Showman, playing games with the devil that he didn't understand what was going on. I think of things like that period of time, and that one of his primary dancers for his nude stage shows and rituals on Broadway was Susan Adkins of the Manson murders. He was well connected. He had people like Sammy Davis Jr. that was a member of the church, and of course Marilyn Manson, Keenan Wynn, and there were several pretty high caliber people, and of course the most infamous being Jane Mansfield, whose daughter Mariska Hargitay, I think it's pronounced, from SVU. That was her mother, and LaVey took credit for her mom's death because he said that he was cutting out pictures and cut through her neck in a photograph. I don't believe half. I believe like almost nothing of what he said, but he was ground level. Let's blow up the Christian church as best we can. And he fairly succeeded, at least in one little area.
Yeah. Vic, how about you?
Yeah. So where do I even begin? I was really intrigued with her caricature of her father. On one hand, she's sort of, unmasking some of the dysfunction in their relationship, and yet she said that the reason that she stepped up as high priestess in the 80s for 5 years was to protect her father. And I still feel that this interview, she was in large part doing that still. She was giving us tidbits of what we wanted to hear, and she was, calling him by a lot of names like narcissist and whatever. But I feel like the severity of the occultism was probably downplayed. I don't think it's so much that she was saying things that weren't true. There was just a lot of things not being said at all. And she kind of made it sound like he just wound this thing up like a toy and just let it do its own thing. And he could care less about anything that had to do with the religion. And he was just all about the celebrities. And I'm sure that he was, but I think he was probably way more interested and hands-on and involved in what that was all about than was being portrayed.
I think he was a mysterious man, and he liked, he kind of liked that persona, and he was obviously did a great job of deceiving a great number of people. And he used people like his daughter to participate in that, as we'll see tonight. So, yeah, we're going to get into this interview, and I'm going to have Katie get ready to queue up this first thing. But I want to respond to this. I think this is important. This is a good question because this is something that's out there. This is something that we see. It says, does anyone think there's anything to the whole Zena LeVay Taylor Swift thing? I'll give my take on it. No, I don't, because I've seen, you know what I'm saying? You can trace somebody's history. You can see their family. You can see where they come from. There's a whole history, okay, that was this is kind of really out in the open when it comes to where Taylor Swift came from and how she came up through, Nashville and how she got signed and all that. It's very similar to this whole thing where people say that Alex Jones is Bill Hicks. Okay. It's just not true. It's just not true. And you can't just take a couple of pictures and put them together and put this stuff out there. It destroys our credibility when we do this.
Can I assume that you don't buy the fact that Barbara Bush is the illegitimate daughter of
Crowley?
Okay, so stop the. That's a little bit of a different. Okay. I
don't know.
Okay, so no, that's a good example. Here's the thing about that. We can put Barbara Bush's mother in the same location in connection with Crowley. Okay, we have that. What should we call it?
Circumstantial
proximity evidence. Okay, we've got testimony. We've got information that says that is a very possible thing that we can put them together. It's kind of like we have the evidence for Trudeau to be connected to spitting images, if you're asking me. But we have the evidence for Trudeau from Canada and his mother connected to not only the Rolling Stones but Fidel Castro. Okay. And there's some very extensive research that goes into that. And hey, I'm open to Taylor Swift being. I think Zena LeVay might be too old or something to be the daughter. But hey, show us the evidence. Just don't put two pictures together. Same thing with the Alex Jones, Bill Hicks. The math just does not work on that. Okay. And people put this out there and it becomes like it's some gospel truth or whatever. Now, the couple that we mentioned, Barbara Bush, maybe we need to do a show about that because there's a lot of good evidence that puts her mother in proximity to Aleister Crowley. And again, the same thing I said about Trudeau. So anyway, I'm speaking for myself. I don't know what you guys think. I'm just giving my take on that.
So just playing devil's advocate for a second. And this just popped into my head now. So this isn't anything, I have any, I don't have a dog in the race. Right. But I mean, I don't think Taylor Swift is Zena's daughter, I'm not saying that, but when we found out that I think all the presidents except for Van Buren have this one relative that you can trace back to some dude in London. And then it's all like 32 cousins first removed to Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie and all these actresses and so I don't think that they're like direct bloodline related, but it would make sense to me that they're just two more people that are a part of the big, huge, happy family.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. And at some point during all of this, if you can remind me, if we've got time, I think it's important that we address a video that's come out about an encounter that some pastors had with a victim who claimed that Zena LeVay had manifested and screamed that they had killed Anton on Halloween night. I mean, I think we need to talk about that.
Yeah, I had planned on talking about that at the end, Greg. So wow. Yeah, I'm glad I need to make a note of that. LeVay's death. So, okay, let's go ahead and take a look at this first clip. And we're kind of getting into it tonight before we even get into the video, which is cool. let's take a look at this first clip, and we're going to watch it for a few seconds here, and then see what the response is. So go ahead, Katie.
Study and things like that. So, and certainly it doesn't hold up. It certainly doesn't hold up in terms of what constitutes a real religion. It's not a real religion. It's just more like a private club, basically. However, I would say that I was raised with the understanding that it was a religion, and I took that very seriously. And then much later in life, during the 80s, when there was the satanic panic, and then I felt that it was my religion that was being under attack. But more importantly was because I had empathy and compassion for my father, and I was very afraid that he was going to be framed for something that was not, that he was not responsible for. And yet he was utterly incapable of defending himself, utterly unwilling to defend himself. That, what I did for that organization was really for my father.
Okay, we can stop it right there. A lot to unpack right there. So if we give her the benefit of the doubt and we take her at her word, Greg, she's now saying that she was brainwashed, brought up in this religion that she was convinced was a religion, but she's now saying that it was just a club. Now, I feel like that's an honest take on what she experienced. So it's a club based around a book that did a lot of damage, where people got it in their hands across this country and around the world and did some pretty horrific things. Greg?
Yeah, I mean, we went to more than a few funerals of kids who killed themselves after reading that book, and I've been to prison. I mean, Sean Sellers was probably the most well-known kid that killed his parents and the store clerk, and he was very committed to all of that stuff. And of course, the LeVays would say, we're not responsible for all of that. If I thought my book was responsible for causing one of those things, I would do some serious soul searching. But I think what Zena might have done at some point, when she decided to leave Church of Satan and join up with Nicholas Schreck of the Radio Werewolf, and allegedly joined up with Michael Aquino. Well, that was Aquino's thing. He's like, look, I was on the Council of Nine. LeVay thought this was some sort of a joke. He really didn't know what he was doing, and I do, essentially. So I think she might have had her eyes open, at least in that ugly world, that my dad doesn't have a clue what he's doing. So I'm going to have to jump ship.
So let me, I want to add this here. I don't know if I'm remembering this wrong or if this is true, but backing up what you just said, from what I remember, Zena left the Church of Satan and got involved in the Temple of Set with Michael Aquino after the fact at some point. Did you know about that, or did you hear about that, Greg? Or
I heard about that like mid I want to say 1990s. We had gotten some intel that she had renounced her father, married Nicholas Schreck, and joined up with Aquino. We don't have the actual paperwork on that, but that was, and then we understood that they got divorced and she moved to Switzerland and was doing goth art or something like that. That's literally the last word we heard until this interview.
Yeah. Okay. Vic?
Yeah, so this sort of ties into a theme that came up over and over and over again, and that was this his admiration of Barnum and Bailey fame, and this whole concept of there's a sucker born every minute. So in other words, if you're dumb enough to believe all this and make me rich and famous, it's not my problem. And Peterson kind of made a good philosophical point that sort of can become a justification for a narcissist. Like, I'm not responsible for any of these funerals you've been to, Greg. I'm not responsible for Sean Sellers. I'm not responsible for people who are committing suicide or, listening to, Suicide Solution and getting all the rock music stuff right. But that's a bit of a break from reality, because if you're going to create, I don't care what you call it. I don't care if you call it a church or a religion or a social club, or you can really call it whatever you want. If it has a ripple effect, what does our religion say? You know a person by their fruit. So if the fruit of what he's doing is distress and dissension and people's lives being hurt, yeah, you can chalk it off to, well, you should have been smarter. You should have seen through my ruse. You should have known this was a circus. Well, that doesn't really let you off the hook. And so this repetitive comparison to her father as almost a ringleader in a circus, it sort of seemed paradoxical to me, because here you've got this guy that's running around in his black nail polish and his capes and trying to look like this really mysterious, frightening guy. But then in the end, he's just running a circus, right? There's a dichotomy in those two images in my mind. So it seems like I don't know, a little bit of an identity crisis. And I don't know if that was within him or if that dichotomy was within the very confused perception of a daughter who'd been traumatized, maybe that's her own logic, like trying to figure it out. Yeah. Who was he? Was he a clown, or was he this powerful guy?
Yeah. So we're not reacting to the whole interview. And if anybody wants to go check out the whole thing, Jordan Peterson, I think, Jordan Peterson does what Jordan Peterson does. Okay. And he looks at Anton LaVey from a psychological perspective, and he breaks it down. He talks about narcissism and all that. So somewhere in the interview, Xena is talking about all of the psychopaths or sociopaths that she's surrounded by when she's growing up. So do you guys remember that part?
Yeah.
And I just thought that was kind of interesting that she maybe wasn't aware then, but looking back, she realizes that she was, she was in danger. And she didn't speak of any abuse that I'm aware of from them, but obviously there's other things that she suffered. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at this next clip. I'm not sure which one it was. I gave Katie several ones, so she can play whichever one that she wants, and we'll just kind of take a look and respond here. So here we go.
And interestingly enough, actually, because I knew Richard Ramirez at the time too, because my husband at the time and I were considering writing a book about him. That's a whole other subject.
Just tell people who he was.
Richard Ramirez was a serial killer, a serial murderer in Los Angeles in the 80s, who self-identified as a Satanist, and he was a follower of my father's. And he's somebody that, the present-day Church of Satan wants to pretend there was no connection to. But here's the thing: as I was beginning to represent the Church of Satan on a broader level, in a broader spectrum, and there were some things that began developing in me, and those were realizations that if you are a real religion, you can't pick and choose who is drawn to that religion. I mean,
okay, go ahead and pause it right there. We might come back to this. But Greg, here she's saying the satanic panic was, what it was described as. Okay, and she says this in the interview, and Satanists don't kill people, but yet here she talks about Richard Ramirez, who was a Satanist, who was a follower of her father, and who was a serial killer. Is it a little hypocritical there? She's being honest,
Yeah, I think she is extremely conflicted, and I'm definitely praying for her, because I still have a picture somewhere of when she was, I think the first baby that was baptized in the Church of Satan. How in the world do you live through that and grow up in that and have any kind of a normal life growing up? I mean, it's like, I think of, and without, pushing the line too much, how much I've watched several videos of the children of the Nazi SS and what they had to live through, realizing here they were growing up in a house. This is all they know. And one day they wake up and find out all this horrendous stuff happened next door. I mean, she's got to be just working out a ton of stuff. And I don't think her Buddhist stuff is going to help her much. She needs to come to terms with reality, and that's going to take a long time. And it's going to take Jesus. It really will.
Yeah. Vic.
So the streetcar drives both ways, right? So at this point, she's saying, we can't help who's drawn to this. And she's right. You can't be responsible for every person that takes everything to the extreme. But the irony in it is it's very apparent throughout the whole interview. She gets very triggered when Abrahamic religions come up, right? And she's very quick to sort of put that in her own framework numerous times. And she talks about the, verbal abuse and threats she got from Christians. And I have no doubt that happened, you guys, because we all know we also can't help who is drawn to Christianity. And there's some people out there that are pretty extreme. So what's interesting is, if you want my empathy and understanding, that I'm not going to be responsible for every weirdo out there that says that they're, a Satanist. Okay, then you also can't throw out every single Abrahamic religion or Christianity or everyone who adheres to it, because we can't help every weirdo that's drawn into our religions either. And so there needs to be a little bit more of a realistic understanding that there's a bunch of weirdos in the world, and a lot of them are attracted to certain religions. And, we have the same problem as the problem you're trying to convey right now. And you can't throw every single Christian out too, just based on some of the ones that you had interactions with.
Good point, Vic. Any response to that, Greg?
No, I mean, that's true. In the work we did over the years in law enforcement, I had to deal with as many snarky Christians as I had to do, thin-skinned Wiccans or whatever. It was like, let's see if I can just manage not to be a complete casualty at the end of this, and there were sometimes, I remember one pastor, we were talking about the pastor earlier, there was one pastor, this was when they were doing all of the Wiccans in the military and stuff, and, all of that. And we were trying to do some workshops, and this pastor was going around saying that Wiccans, ate babies and, all that stuff. And, he showed up at one of my workshops and he started to go into that. And I just had to say, sir, with all due respect, you have no clue what you're talking about. And unless you start to understand what I'm putting up here on this board, I would appreciate it if you would not add to something that's just making it more difficult for us to tell the truth. So, Zena, I'm sure I've met some ugly people. There's no question about it. But like Vicki said, I mean, I'm not responsible for that. I'm just responsible for me, that I don't be one of those people. And I don't that's why I've always, to what degree I've dealt with people in the occult world, I want to do it with the compassion of Jesus, even if it's hard sometimes.
Yeah. And it's hard not to have empathy for Zena. She's articulate. And what she was or wasn't involved in, I don't know. But I do know this is someone who has had a lot of trauma. And I can't not empathize. I can't not vicariously put myself in her shoes and think, where would I be right now if I had gone through all that? And I don't even know half of what she went through, because she was, safeguarding probably a lot of what really did happen.
Yeah. Man, I hate to hear that anybody would threaten her. You know what I'm saying? I would never think of physically threatening a Satanist. Satanists are involved in a lot of things I don't like. all levels, all denominations of Satanists. But I hate that anybody would do that to her, and that's happened, and it's definitely caused some issues, and I think if we're honest, we can maybe think of examples in our own life where we've had an experience with a certain person from a certain place, and it could be a city, and we're like, yeah, I don't ever want to go back to that city. Well, it's not the whole city's fault, just because one guy there treated you bad, So anyway, yeah. So let's watch a little bit more of that specific clip, and then we'll move on. So responding to Zena LeVay, go ahead.
Those were realizations that if you are a real religion, you can't pick and choose who is drawn to that religion. I mean, there are Christian murderers too, but each Christian denomination can't just close shop and say, well, you can't join, because if you are a true religion, you can't have that kind of selectivity. Religion is something bigger. Religion isn't a private club, right? So then that brought to mind philosophical questions, like well, what is the meaning of it? What purpose does a religion serve actually then to the community? And if we are supposed to be this kind of anti-religion or a counter-religion, what purpose does that serve, and to who? And so it's just a religion of Anton LaVey's personal friends? Well, then that's not a religion, right? But he had different tiers. He had like his inner circle, and then he had his circle of friends who in fact were outside of the Church of Satan, people that he liked to feel like he could have a kind of Machiavellian, and also Rasputin, the Russian monk Rasputin.
Okay, so that's enough there. But Greg, any response to she's kind of explaining the circles of acquaintances of LaVey? Does that line up or make sense with kind of what you know about him?
It does. I mean, LaVey was he took advantage of whatever was going to give him some sense of importance. That's why he loved Hollywood so much. I mean, getting this picture taken with Sammy Davis Jr. was a real coup for him. Being a technical advisor, most people don't remember this movie was called The Devil's Reign. I mean, and it had Tom Skerritt, and it had John Travolta, and it had, I think William Shatner was in that movie. Whether he actually was a technical advisor on Roman Polanski, possibly. I think that's a whole other show we could do about the Manson and the Tate LaBianca thing. But he drew people to himself that would give him a sense of that he had made an impact and that he was a celebrity. He loved that.
Yeah. Vic, do you remember when Zena LeVay and Nicholas Schreck started doing their tour on the talk shows?
Oh yeah,
and
I mean it's been
Satanism, and then even the Bob Larson video. Do you remember that?
I do. I mean, I don't have much of a recall. Like I remember seeing them back in the day when they were originally on, and she was kind of singing a little bit of a different tune back then in her youth. But yeah, I do remember those videos.
Yeah. She kind of had I don't want to say the attitude, but she kind of had the confidence that I don't want to misrepresent her, but if I remember correctly, that Satanism was going to kind of take over the world, and that these Satanists, there's a lot of Satanists out there that nobody, that they don't want anybody to know they're Satanists, prominent people.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not coming out of the satanic closet because it would ruin their career. Okay. And she would kind of brag about that. Like, we have our membership, and we're going to watch a clip here in a little bit where it talks about the membership had surged, and it was directly connected to her because she became the face of Satanism. So, it's kind of interesting that back then people wanted to distance themselves from Satanism, but now they embrace it, and it's right out, it's right out in the open. Used to be heavy metal bands that would take on that imagery, and not all of them were involved in it, but they liked the money they made from it. Now, many of them were, and they were involved directly into, Satanism and doing rituals and stuff like that. So, anyway, comments on any of that, guys?
Well,
go ahead, Vicki.
I was just going to say it's ironic that, now we find ourselves in 2024 and she's doing interviews about compassion, and meanwhile, exactly what she was saying in those interviews from way back when, Tom, we see it's right in front of our faces. All of these award shows and sports stadiums, they're doing the rituals right out in public. Like, they're not, it's ironic that her prophetic sense has now, come to fruition, but now she's decrying, I don't want to have anything to do with that, and I'm all about compassion. But this, again, you can't divorce yourself from the ripple effect or the fruit of what you've done. I mean, the fact of the matter is she was a part of something that's now huge, and it's taken over. And now the youth aren't saying, oh, satanic panic, this stuff's not true. They're wearing Do What Thou Wilt shirts, and they know all about Aleister Crowley, and they're wearing Baphomet shirts, and now it's like the trend.
Yeah, I just gone into my bank the other day just to do a little transaction. There's a new girl working there. She's full on beyond goth Satanist, doing the goat head jewelry and everything. And I'm like, well, things certainly have changed. And so it's kind of now a new form of popularity with it. And it's kind of funny because when I did I think it was Montel Williams years ago, and had on one of the people, there was a big Church of Satan guy, and he was going into this routine of, we are elitists. We just don't accept anybody. I'm like, I've got your form here, $50. I can become a member. How elitist can you be? So they kind of go back and forth between, but I think Xena said some stuff. We may or may not be able to touch on that. But she did allude to the fact that this was not traditional Satanism, that there were other groups and other people, and there was an acknowledgement that this little piece of the pie was very nice looking in some ways, but the ugly part we just don't want to associate with. But you can't dissociate yourself from it.
Yeah. Greg, what do you think? Do you think she's being authentic? Do you think she's still covering up in some ways, or do you think she is just she's actually just disclosing?
I think she's cautiously disclosing. I think she's probably been, messed with enough, like anybody coming out of a cult. She may not feel secure in what she can and cannot say. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. I personally know that there's some things that go into her history and her father's history that extend all the way down here to the Southwest, that eventually she and a bunch of people are going to have to start talking to. But for the time, not knowing where she's at, I hope she's telling the truth about what parts she is talking about.
Yeah. Well, and she did say there, she made a reference to Richard Ramirez, and she said modern day Satanists don't want to admit that he had a connection to their church. So she is somewhat admitting that there is a connection to some people that are not, and she said she even knew him. I don't know how close she was with him, but they want to kind of, hide that. And I'm assuming she's talking about the Church of Satan and not the Satanic Temple. I would have liked to hear what she even thinks about the Satanic Temple, if she even is, I don't think that was talked about in the interview, but obviously these guys are, reinventing, and riding on the coattails, of Anton LaVey, and just kind of taking that and manipulating it, politically. So, yeah, okay. Let's go to another clip here. that I don't know which one this is going to be, but we're going to check it out here. So,
and then just physically, I was physically known and branded that way. Now the paradox is there were people. The Church of Satan actually began the membership began to grow because of my being out there. So it created a new upsurge in membership. And my father realizing this is kind of a funny detail, my father realizing that I was actually generating more income for him and more membership. I remember he told me once that because I was doing such a good job representing him and that there were new members coming in, that he was going to, that he would actually pay me, I think 25% of all new memberships that come through that actually mention that they've seen me and wrote to join. So what's funny is he did that for the first three memberships. So I got, like, at that time, I got $75 because at that time memberships were $100. And so I got $25 for 3. And
okay,
then
pause it right there. We'll come back to this. Okay, wow, all that work and she gets $75. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of interesting, that story there, and the details that she remembers. I wonder if she's just kind of hurt or disgruntled, or I mean, and then the other side of it would be, maybe people that would defend the Church of Satan, which would probably say she's lying.
Is there anybody left to defend it, as far as you know?
Well, I don't know what it's like now, but probably about over 10 years ago, the grandchildren were fighting over it, and they had taken it in. There were 2 claims that probably it was Zena's son, and then another son, or another grandchild somewhere, I think, was taking it, and both of them were calling themselves the real Church of Satan, and that the other guy is, so there was dissension running through the satanic family tree.
Yeah, it definitely had a split at some point. I know Carla, I think she was a police officer in New York or something. She was the titular head of the Church of Satan after her dad, supposedly, and there was a fight between her and Blanche, I think, and I don't know if I got all the names right. And then the main kiddo, Satan, Xerxes Karnacki LeVay, I don't know what happened to him, but there's been this, it's just all fragmented. It's just...
Yeah. Well, and I don't know all the names and how they're related either, but there was one name that was Stanton.
Yes.
Okay. And then I think there was another name that was actually Satan. Somebody named one of their kids.
Yeah. Satan Karnacki.
Right?
Satan Xerxes Karnacki LeVay. Now, I don't know if that was Stanton and he changed his name, but that's what they named the kid.
Okay.
So he's going to need therapy, I think, at some point. Yeah. I would.
No kidding. And there is a picture out there somewhere with Hank Williams III, who is the grandson of Hank Williams, with his arm around, and also Joe Rogan, with the grandson. I'm pretty sure of the Satanist there. Now, just because they're doing a photo op doesn't mean these guys are Satanists, by the way. But not going to defend them. So, but
and at some point, it's a problem for me when I see, like, back when the whole satanic panic thing really got a lot of airplay, that I was seeing these major Christian voices that were going and hanging out with the LeVays, having dinner with them. One of them wrote a whole article called "A Strange Evening with the LeVays," and I'm like, as a Christian, I want to be able to reach them, but I don't think I would be bragging about the fact that we broke bread together. That's just me, I guess.
Yeah.
Not even safe from a spiritual standpoint with the whole salt covenant. That's the whole breaking of bread.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if if there's any more clips, Tom, or if this is something we were going to talk about, but I would love to get Greg's take on, she completely was hands off on the McMartin preschool and was talking about how that was just the way I took it was she was basically saying that the Satanic Panic was exactly that, and that's when it really got out of hand. And so it seemed like she was distancing herself from that being a reality at all.
Yeah. She did mention that in the interview. And for anybody that's watching this show tonight, I'll recommend you go check the interview out. It's kind of interesting to see her disclose after all these years.
Yeah.
And we are kind of working through how do we receive this information? Okay. I don't think it's wrong to be cautious. Okay. But looking at her body language and looking at the details that she gives, I feel like she's mostly being honest. I bet, Greg, that she knows a lot darker things than just being connected to Richard Ramirez.
Absolutely.
I bet she does.
Yeah.
And
you absolutely have to be in where she's. I mean, they met everybody that was everybody.
Yeah.
And believe me, no matter what circle you are, when you get into that level, whether it's public or private, all eyes are on the next player, the next leader, the people they can influence or be influenced by or whatever. And it's interesting. Somebody had made a comment about Satanists claim that they don't believe in human sacrifice. And of course, we've ridden that train and given them the benefit of the doubt for a long time. And it hasn't been until the last 6 months that I've been able to say these same people that claim they don't do human sacrifice are now going to New Mexico to abortion clinics where they gladly offer a satanic ritual that you can perform while sacrificing your baby. So stop lying, folks. If you're into this stuff, the game's up. We know what you're really about, and you need to repent and come to Jesus because this is real serious.
How appropriate for them to own and run a abortion clinic. Yeah. Not a shocker there, folks. So, and yeah, it does corroborate what we've been saying for years.
Yeah.
So when I read Ozzy's book, his claim was, he's like, you know what? We were kids. We had some ideas, and we weren't really into the occultism. Now, if you look at the very first album of Black Sabbath, there is a, inverted cross in there and things like that. And it's very heavy in their music. But according to the book, he said Satanists would show up at their shows and they would like, man, get these freaks out of here. We don't want anything to do with this. We're, we're just doing rock and roll here. So using that example, I'm sure there were a lot of people like Ramirez that were following. I mean, look at the, the satanic statements. Okay. And, I mean, it's basically a guide on how to break all the 10 commandments. So anyway, I'm sure there are a lot of people and a lot of stories that we'll never hear that are connected to things like that. So,
and to me, that it gets very personal because I've worked with youth my whole life. I don't know how many kids' funerals we went to who were influenced by this music, and between that and the drugs and the drinking, those are real kids that are no longer here. And I always get a kick out of Ozzy just because, he's just so out there. I pray for him a lot. I know he lived next to Pat Boone for a long time, and they were pretty good buddies. So I'm hoping that something gets through. But, when Suicide Solution came out, and then he disavowed and said it had to do with alcohol and not suicide. I'm like, well, why do you have the lyric at the end that says, get the gun, do it, shoot, shoot, shoot? Ozzy, it's real time. If he ever gets to hear this, his last album was so dark. And I thought with all the Christians he's had, that's somebody I really pray for, because time's the clock's running out.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes if we can just sit down and have honest conversations, maybe we've got a chance of breaking through that whole wall of lies that they have put up around themselves to justify what they do. I don't know.
Yeah. Greg, there was a really good story that came out very recently about a guy that witnessed to the Osbournes, and he gave Ozzy a Bible with his name on it. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I'm not sure where to find it, but this guy, his mission is to minister to celebrities, and I think he's pretty good at it. It's kind of cool. And he saw Jack Osbourne maybe a week later, and he said, "You're the guy that gave," Jack Osbourne said, "You're the guy that gave my dad that Bible." Man, he kept that with him all the next day, and he kept showing everybody the Bible that he got. That's encouraging. You hope, man, and I know a lot of people praying for Ozzy, and I would encourage everybody to. He's a very beloved person. I remember when the show came out, The Osbournes. There you go. Yeah, celebrity evangelist Dylan Novak gives Ozzy Osbourne a Bible. So there's the story on it. Really great story. Really great story. I think, Vicki, you and I covered it when it first broke.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say too, when he's whoever he is, whatever his involvement was. But I have to admit, the one time I read a part of his book and I laughed when he said he was just tired after a show and there was a knock on the door, and he opened the door. There was a bunch of people in a circle around a candle chanting, and he went over and blew out the candle and said, "Happy birthday" to me, and went back to bed. So I think he's reachable at some point. Maybe.
Yeah. When his show came out, The Osbournes, I was like, this is the dude? This is the dude that was so scary like all these years, and he had the crazy album covers and all these preachers warned me about. And I was watching the show, and obviously it became a big hit, because it showed him showed people what he was really like. And there were no, satanic circles, in his house. It was just a normal dysfunctional family.
Well, and I think he had all the this is just my guess.
Yeah.
That I think that he had, this is maybe out there, but I think he had all the crosses up in the house because he had a lot of them. Because I think when who was as good, Randy Rhoads, took that plane up and came right back down and sliced their motorhome in half and nearly killed he and Sharon.
Yeah.
I think he may have realized he doesn't have any protection from some of the stuff that he brought in. It's just a guess.
Yeah. He's very superstitious in that way, where he's just like, get me something that represents holiness or good around me to protect me. And I don't know if there's a comprehension thing or if there's handlers, and we're kind of going down a rabbit trail about Ozzy, but that's okay. So anyway, interesting stuff. So guys, we'll be interested to read the comments and see what you guys think. Hey, you guys are crazy. It's usually what we get. Why you gotta be so blind? Ozzy is a Satanist. Everybody knows it. Anyway. So let's go back. Let's go back and see if there's anything else in the in that last clip that we can respond to, if it's still available. So
$5 for 3, and then it never happened again. Never happened again.
Yeah. So that was one of those pieces of information. Yeah.
It was a gesture that was to dangle the carrot and make me think, oh, well, maybe, but that dropped out. And not that I was doing it for the money, but I thought, for the first time in my life, I thought, oh, my father's actually doing something for me to help me. And he's actually acknowledging my contribution to what I'm doing for his organization. But it didn't last. It didn't last. And then that was that. And you asked me something else about so here I want to clarify.
Yeah.
Because of the new upsurge of membership, here again, my father would cherry pick the people that he felt like, well, these people are in a category of movers and shakers. They're kind of like in the new punk scene. And, he was an old fart at that point. So he thought, well, this'll, maybe they'll boost my ratings with the cool kids. And so there was a new upsurge in the membership of what he would call the Rubes. But then there was also a new upsurge in what he cherry picked as his little inner circle. And that was of these new kind of, hipster kind of edgy, punky or whatever, just I wouldn't even know how to describe them by today's standards. But the interesting thing is they always claim, well, she just didn't know how to use it to her advantage. And what they mean by that, do you know what they mean by that?
No, please elucidate.
Okay, let's pause it there. So, and you guys can go back and watch this whole interview on Jordan Peterson's channel if you want. It's she seems kind of whimsical about what I would think would be kind of traumatic. And maybe if she were to hear me say that, maybe she thinks that I'm being dramatic. I mean, it seems as though she was surrounded by darkness growing up, but she has maybe a good attitude about it, or, maybe she has received some healing from it. I mean, what do you guys think about just even how she's portraying herself here?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, Tom, because I've been thinking in my own head, and I wasn't going to say anything, but just viewing this as a female, right? Now that her father has passed away, there's no ability to sort of redeem or recapture that relationship she never had, that she wanted. So she's attempting through fantasy to create for herself some semblance that her and her father were bonded in some way, because she's smiling. She's reminiscing. She probably doesn't have that many stories to tell. These were moments where there was a semblance of pride in her. You're doing a good job. And, who cares if he didn't pay her more than once or whatever? She's trying to take the fragments of moments where it could be construed that he was proud of her.
That is such an important point that you just made. I will never forget after my grandmother died, and I talked to my dad about how my mom reacted, and he said that she just sat there and wept and said, all I wanted my whole life was just for once for her to tell me that she loved me. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think I think the way it turned, and anybody that sees the whole interview, it's very important. What she realized, and she alluded to the fact that Dad took a hit out on her, and then her whole countenance changes as she talks about doing what, a 10-day destruction ritual, 7 days, 10 days, to curse the family and everybody in it. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's really the heart of it, I think, with her.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I was so terrified the day my mom was going to die, because I used to work with a woman whose mom died, and her mom had been gone like 10 years. And every day we would go for a walk and she would sob over her mom. And I thought, oh no. And then when my mom died, I didn't have that much of a reaction. And so I went back to this coworker and was like, hey, and she's like, oh no. She's like, me and my mom didn't have a relationship at all. We never got along. And I realized, a lot of times the grief has more to do with what was lost and is never going to be captured. Not because, like, I had 41 years of awesomeness. I've got great memories that I can live on the rest of my life, right? And so I saw a lot of pain and Xena trying to reconcile something. because you can create a narrative when someone's gone, and you can romanticize things. And this poor girl probably just wanted dad to say, I'm proud of you, I love you.
I'm trying to remember a specific question in her response in an interview, and it might have been a Bob Larson interview. I'm pretty sure it was. Bob Larson was interviewing Zena LeVay and Nicholas Schreck. He asked Nicholas Schreck a question, and he got a really cold satanic answer. And then he turned to Zena and he asked her the same question, and she gave a very similar question. He said, Zena, you're a woman, and women, I'm paraphrasing here, women are supposed to be more kind-natured or whatever, or more compassionate. And he said, and she basically just looked at him real cold and said, you're not going to get a kind answer out of me just because I'm a woman. I feel the exact same way. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to decide if I see that same person there or not. I feel like there might be remnants of it that are either part of her personality, or I could be misreading. But
passion is for the weak. That's what she was raised with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I did notice, like, she even brought it up, and I think she brought it up because she's proud of it. I got to go to the rituals because I was precocious. The sister didn't get to go, and she still is. Like, I thought there's not a lot of people that would go toe to toe with Jordan Peterson and be interrupting and correcting. And she had confidence. Like, she was not intimidated by his status. And she definitely had some spunk.
Yeah. And she says about her own personality that when she was little, people would say, oh, she's a shy little girl. She's like, I'm not shy. I just don't like you.
I don't have anything to say.
I don't have anything to say to you. Yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
is it possible that we can touch on what we referred to earlier about because somebody has actually asked about it, about how LeVay died and about
the
story that is out there.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and jump into that. And then we have another clip that we'll take a look at in a little bit, but let's talk about that.
In the last year, I became aware of a video of some pastors who were helping a survivor who claimed to be very deeply involved with the LeVays at some level. I don't remember I don't know what the claims were. I'll have to refresh my memory. But it went up to the whole deal where the cops got involved and they lived in another city, and then she would run and come back, and clearly to me a survivor. I don't think there was any question about that. But then she started to, I guess, channel members of the LeVay family. I mean, there was like demons. They were trying to extract demons from her. And then at some point, Zena showed up on Halloween night and started to scream and said, you killed my father. And I just I was so appalled by this because, I mean, I don't want to be uncompassionate, but this is the kind of thing where you have to stop and say, these things were not so. LeVay did not die on Halloween night. I've got the death certificate. I believe it was the 28th, and he died, I believe, of COPD. And Zena had renounced him years before that. Mm. And it just kind of was disturbing to me because I want people to know the truth, and I want to be compassionate, but it just was kind of an example to me of, especially in the kind of work that we do, we have to vet out the truth about things with as much compassion as we can, and we can't afford to promote stories that just are not true.
No, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Greg. The timeline didn't line up for me as well, and I guess there was just I don't know. The story seems like it fills in a lot of blanks as far as what a true story would be, but I don't know. Something is not adding up there for me. a few things are not adding up, and you have to ask if this person, I mean, anybody can say they're channeling anybody. That's not evidence, unless you're seeing somebody, because if there's a demonic presence involved, it can imitate anybody or anything, and that could have been just an opportunity for, networking demons that know LeVay's died or is gonna die or something like that, and they can imitate a whole scenario like that. So obviously we can't trust demons, we can't trust channeling, we have to trust God's word, and we have to trust hard evidence. So
and I think it's important to throw this out there, because if there by any chance, if this does reach out to the people or the pastors involved, I think I would like to let them know that we are here. We don't know everything, but God put us here to be able to help to sort through the stuff that we know and that we don't know, so that we don't get shipwrecked, which is exactly what the enemy wants. He wants us to be tripped up and have us become non-credible. And we've all been down that road at some point.
Yeah. And folks, if you've been watching this show for a while, I always say we want the truth. We're not just taking the Christian side because he's got a good story, and not saying, I'm not casting any kind of just ideas on this person at all. I'm just saying some things don't add up for me. And there's a lot of stories out there that, man, if this is a true story, this would really fit our narrative. Well, I don't care if it fits our narrative. I care if it's true or not. So we want the truth 100%, on everything. And it's important that we do, because if we don't, then everything falls apart. Okay. So God doesn't need us to make up stories. Not saying that guy's doing that, but and do things like this. Okay. The truth is on our side. We don't need to, add anything to it. So yeah, definitely.
And I think the truth can stand up as much as it needs to under scrutiny. I remember when I wrote my story, I didn't write it because I was even trying to do anything except just get it out of my system. But at every point along the way, I thought, if someone comes along and is able to point to me something that I got wrong or that I made up or anything, I'm changing it in a New York minute, because the victims need to have validation, and they get validation through being able to take those things they've been through and let the word of God and the truth just sort out what is, what wasn't. I know there's survivors that are on this channel, a number of them, and we want that. We want to have a clear story, and sometimes that's scary because you've got 1,000 memories. It's like, which ones are true, which ones are not true. But that's why I'm so thankful for what you guys are doing and what Russ put in place and did, because you provided a place where survivors can go and feel safe to have people that know what's going on sort through what is and what isn't, so that they can reclaim their life. And I just want to thank God for you guys and everything that you've done and continue to do for survivors.
Hey, well, we're all in this together, Greg. But you know what? Speaking of Russ, and then I'm thinking, Greg, of you and I, we don't all agree on everything. We have different pieces of the puzzle. And there were times I got in conversations with Russ over cases and things that were hitting the news. They could be a cold case or it could be something new. And I noticed Russ kind of latched onto something that wasn't accurate. And when I showed him, I'm like, hey, Russ, you may not know this, but, and I showed him the evidence. He was like, oh, I didn't know that. Thank you for showing me that. And then the same thing happened, because I would hear about things and I asked Russ tons of questions, and he was there. Right. And he was like, this is what I think about this. And, I remember when this happened, and, for example, one of the things was John Todd, Russ had an opinion on that. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know that information, and I could be totally wrong about something, but I'm only, I can only base, what I know on whatever. are the truth on what I know. And we always say we reserve the right to be wrong. That's what I say, because I may not know that, I may not have the whole picture, you know. So anyway, and we could kind of go on about that, but I can tell you this: there's no agenda in us to lie or to make something up. And if we find something out, if there's something that I've said that is, that would defame even somebody like Anton LaVey, I will correct the record and say, hey, Anton LaVey did this, this, and this, and I said he did this, but I was wrong, because I don't want to lie about Anton LaVey or anybody. It doesn't do me any good. So
truth is paramount. Truth is important. And I've always felt like, especially in the work that we do, we have to do our due diligence to make sure that we are being as close to that ideal as we possibly can. And sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it's hard to go back and say, boy, I really messed up on that one. But, I think we gain people's trust in our reporting through our ability to own our mistakes along the way and present as best we can a clear truth about the things that we've seen. Just like I think it was John said, we're reporting about those things that we have seen and touched and handled ourselves. And that's all we're trying to do. Yeah.
Amen. Let's go ahead and take a look at this last clip and see what we got here. We've been responding to the Zena LaVey interview with Jordan Peterson. Go ahead, Katie.
Feeling she had about her own daughter, it then continued on to me as well.
Right. Okay, so let's go into the 80s now, and when you really decided to take up the mantle. Now, you've laid the groundwork for that. You said that you were a dutiful person. You said that it was in your father's interest and your mother's too, to have someone who was innocent and actually aiming up and a believer in the moral propriety of the enterprise defend them. And you happen to be, as far as I can tell, you happen to be the choice for that role. And so you played the role of high priestess for how many years?
5.
5 years. Okay.
5 years.
So tell me what that meant for you. Like, there's the priestess element, and then there's the family spokesperson element. And then there's the next element would be what the consequences were for you of playing that role, let's say, and then also your disillusionment and movement onward to a different way of conceptualizing the world. So let's start with what you actually did. Like, what did it mean to have that role for 5 years?
That's what I had to figure out. Because it just happened suddenly. I had to figure out because in my mind, my mother was the high priestess, but she had left. So there was a vacancy. There wasn't, and occasionally, actually, my sister too served in that.
So let's pause it just for a second, so we don't get in any trouble for any kind of copyright strike. We got to take breaks like that every once in a while. But Vic, kind of going back to what you said and her boldness and even interrupting and just kind of just making sure everything was crystal clear as Jordan Peterson is kind of laying this out. It is kind of interesting to kind of see that happen all throughout the interview. And they're really breaking down just the psychological, the psychoanalyzation of her parents, okay? Who was Anton LaVey, and help me, Greg, because she doesn't mention the name, but Blanche, right?
Blanche Barton, I think.
Yeah. So, that's what I thought. I wasn't 100% sure, but that's what I thought. And Blanche Barton was the one who wrote the biography on the Church of Satan. She was the only one authorized to do it. So any response to that clip, or just kind of, she talks about being dutiful and just being the person's like, okay, I've got a job to do, and part of my job is to protect my family, because people are saying that Satanists are this, and I'm saying Satanists are this. And if word gets out that this is going on, it's going to hurt my family. And she even said at one point that she thought her father could get framed for something, and she had a real fear of that.
And I think, I'm just off the cuff. Those of you who may have been like many of us that grew up in kind of a alcoholic sort of situation, some of us become the family fixers, so that nobody really understands what's going on the inside, because we feel like that's our job, is to protect our family, even if it's not something that really needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's profound, honestly, to take that concept and add it to the first family of Satan. So Vic, any response?
Yeah, well, to add to what Greg is saying, and I don't know if there's other siblings. I know she's got an older sister, and I think there was quite a bit of an age gap between the two of them. But I know that the second born is the peacekeeper of the family. That tends to be the trait of the second born. But I still kind of going back to my, presumption from the beginning of the show, even though she's disclosing a lot of information, very honest information about the foibles of her and flaws of her parents, I still think she's trying to protect him and to control the narrative. I think there's probably still a love and a fear driving her even in this interview.
Very, very interesting. Greg, I see there's a direct question to you. I want to answer that, but I want to watch this clip first. Okay. So let's look at a few more seconds of this clip, and then we'll go on.
In that role, when she was lecturing, or my father dispatched her to Amsterdam to be sort of the spokesperson and the one to oversee and kind of keep an eye on what was going on in the European Church of Satan. So in that capacity, then my sister also was high priestess in those days, in that way, in those capacities. But in my mind, my mother was the only high priestess, and I had to think, well, because I was a single mother at that time, and I was not in a position to, and I was also I was working in hospitals and law offices. No, I think at that time I was working at UCSF. No, I was working at UC Davis in environmental health and safety. So I had a full-time schedule on my plate. Being a single mother, what was most needed was to do interviews, because he told me he didn't have anybody. I mean, the Church of Satan was sort of moribund at that point. There had been a couple of schisms in the 70s, and that left my father really in a deep state of very dark depression, really malignant black dark depression, and agoraphobia, and he just sequestered himself into his home and would only go to very select safe places in public, but he was not doing any interviews anymore.
Okay, so pause it right there. This is something that that we knew years ago. Okay, kind of confirmation, her kind of explaining how that went down. When I think of Anton LaVey, I don't think of somebody that would be depressed. Of course, we never saw him. We saw old clips of him. Okay, so there were no real new clips of Anton LaVey. Zena had become the face of the Church of Satan, and she's saying, and it shouldn't be surprising to us, he went into a deep depression. Huh.
What a shock. I
mean,
it reminds me of, what was his name? His name was H.R. Giger, and he did the creature for the movie Aliens, and there was another movie he did, this ugly dark, totally into the dark side. I mean, his artwork was, he would do gas chambers with babies strapped to it, and you name it, it's just ugly. And I saw a video I mean, he's gone on to his real rightful whatever, but they did an interview of him and showed his whole house. I think it was in Switzerland. We had, the pentagram table, all elaborate and all the satanic. And his mother, who's German, is like, I don't understand why my son is so depressed. I'm like, okay, Mom, you get the Clueless Mom of the Year award. Your son has just dipped himself in death for years. You can't do what Anton LaVey's done. And I mean, that doesn't surprise me at all that he ended up in that, because in the end, he found out, if the words are true, that his last words were something like, oh my, something's wrong, which I don't know for sure if it was true or not. But if it were, it would make sense, because he finally, as we all do, that last moment realized that we either lived for a lie or we followed the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought the ultimate irony, Greg, was, the whole interview started out with, there's a sucker born every minute. And he was that ringleader, using everybody else for his fame and the, and at the very end, you find out that Satan was ultimately the ringleader, and one of the suckers born every minute. He ends in depression with a broken family and saying something's wrong. And so for me, it was just sadly poetic how that theme of you thought you were the dupe, you thought you were the one duping everybody, and at the end you found out that you actually weren't the ultimate ringleader. There was one above you.
So Anton LaVey was not really well liked by the public at large because of his satanic claims, right? And even people that were unchurched or your average American knew that they better not mess with the devil. Okay. So what do you think it would have been like if he would have had his prime now? How do you think he would have been received?
Oh,
I suppose part of it, he'd just be in the middle of a big church split, because he and the head of the Satanic Temple would be fighting for, the position as Black Pope, and they would be like many denominations. They'd just be lobbing bombs at each other, and his success was his novelty. If this was in his prime, he would just be one in a mix of of many that people would just be sorting through to see which one was fun, I guess.
Yeah. Greg, there was a you don't have to go into any kind of elaborate explanation, but somebody asked about Dr. Rebecca Brown. Did you see that comment in there?
I did.
And you have this has been answered years ago. You've addressed this on this show in quite a lot of detail. Not asking you to do that tonight, but you did have, some encounters with Rebecca Brown. Anything you want to say about that?
Yes, and I think it's important because they're still out there, and I can be under the same scrutiny as they are because I'm a public person. I met Dr. Brown and Elaine in 1986 when I was trying to get to the bottom of my story. I put Elaine into a little bit of a panic when I told her I was going back to Box Canyon where they did all this, and she just panicked and said, I'm begging you not to go back there. You have no idea who you're dealing with. And everything in my gut said, whatever she was working through in terms of her own experience, she was the real deal, but she was also being totally 100% controlled. And in the end, she ended up dying of a broken heart when she was completely abandoned. And so I had a point in my dealings with them when I'd met with them, told them about what happened to me. My story ended up in their second book, and they'd changed the details and not told the truth about it. And I thought, I can't, even back then, I thought, I have to deal in truth. And if they're not putting things for whatever reason, I can't support that. So it's and after Elaine died, I know that Dr. Brown remarried and they've got their own whatever they're doing. But personally, I can't. If you read the book, just read it prayed up and just sort through what is and what isn't.
So, and I guess my response is I read her book years ago, and I actually I met her as well. She came to my town, and I told Russ, I said, Russ, what do you think about this person? And he said, hey, I'll come down. So Russ and I sat in on a meeting with her. Not a meeting, but she was speaking. And first of all, I read the book, and my opinion about the book is the first one was she was dealing with something she didn't understand. And people reference that book, and I feel like it's misinformation, because she talks about these human spirits, and I think she was dealing with multiple personalities and she didn't know it. And then I was at her her talk here in Mansfield, and she spoke for 2 days, and I thought, well, I'm just going to ask a question just to participate, And I asked her, I said, I made a comment about something like, I was reading a book and my daughter had a bad dream. And I just, thought of that. And I wanted to ask her, and she just like scolded me. She's like, stop reading those books. And I'm like, it was your book,
Whoops.
Yeah. So
Oh gosh.
it was your book, or a book like it. It was, it was research. I'm not reading any, occultic books, but she just became judge, jury, and executioner just like that. And it was like, there's no discernment here. I didn't have a good experience with her. So
I think in the end, after combing through 35 years of, and I just wrote a part of everything that I remember. I could never in a lifetime get through all of them, but I realized in the end that we all were facing things and dealing with things that we didn't understand at the time. Some of us were survivors trying to get healed while we were trying to help others. Some went in the field not knowing why they were there, but that God had called them. We had a lot of well-intentioned people that went in, and at some point they left because they realized they didn't believe any of it. We had some other people that were deliberate plants that were there to make sure nobody believed in any of it.
Yeah.
And there were some people, a couple of stories that we heard, and just very quickly on this, the lady that I worked with, she finally gave me all of her case files because she wanted to do something else. And I was going through this one, and I remember her calling me about this case and saying, there's a guy coming through town. He's high level involved in this stuff. And he claims to be a relative of this particular family out in California. And I think, well, let's just say his first name was the name of a woman, which was the name, I think, of LeVay's first wife. His second name was Samhain, and his last name was LeVay. And I thought, I don't want to do this. I'll let you guys vet him out, because already up front, it sounds really hokey. Because we've met more LeVay daughters, sons, great aunts, uncles, whatever. And then I went back through the file 10 years after the fact, and I'm like, this guy was absolutely telling the truth, and we missed it.
Oh.
He named crematoriums. He named local players that we found out were involved. So, it's almost impossible. The fog of war is our biggest enemy in what we do. And so that's why we count on each other, I think, that are networking together to say, hey, go or no go. I need to know what your counsel is on that, because some people's stories just are flat not true, and that can hurt things, and other people may sound like they're not true, but they could be. And so, I count on you guys and a few other people that I can call and say, hey, I just don't have the full understanding. Give me your wisdom on this. So,
Greg, what you just said is so important.
Yeah.
What we do is very difficult. There's a lot of deception involved, And there could be people coming to us very well-meaning, but this person has been abused, they've been tortured, they've been traumatized, they've been drugged, and they don't even know what the truth is, and they're looking for help. They want to they just want to know they're not crazy, and we try our best, to help them. And man, I've just, over the years, I've talked to so many people, and my heart breaks for them. And to be 100% honest, we don't have all the answers that people are looking for, but we can tell them Jesus.
Amen.
Jesus is the answer.
Yes.
And he will heal you from the inside out. And what I tell people, no matter where they're from, get as much of Jesus as you possibly can. Time with him in prayer, time with him reading his word, and allow him to heal you and to change you. Okay. And and seek holiness, seek, just to become mature, to become a mature Christian. And as you do this, you're going to heal. And then you can heal your relationships, and then you can help other people. And this goes for everybody. We're not even talking about the extreme examples of human trafficking and people that have been abused through a cult or in the occult or Satanism. It can apply to anybody. I didn't go through any of that stuff. And God done amazing work inside of me, just in my little dysfunctional family, and it works. It's real, and we cannot emphasize it enough. Most of the people that we deal with, they're kind of a mess, but there are a few people that are strong in their devotion and strong in their faith and strong. Their foundation is very strong. Okay. And those are the ones that I notice that are doing a lot better. Now, easier said than done, but we still preach this, and we still say, hey, this is the answer. There's a lot of free teaching on throughtheblack.com. We have an amazing archive, and it's not for everybody, but books here from Greg, from Vicki, that are available, that are, game changers. For me, the game changer for me that started off was the teaching Confronting the Powers by Russ Dizdar. And I still recommend that teaching. Russ, man, he had the gift of teaching. It's free on our website, by the way. And lots of, Greg, all your videos are out there free somewhere, podcasts, all that stuff. So, we've, Vicki, you and I have been at this for a few years, and you've been on some other shows before me, and I forgive you for that. But you and we have put out a lot of content, so, right?
That's right. That's right. We don't talk about the past.
Yeah.
Y'all have some real fans down here in El Paso. You have a lot of fans down here to listen to you guys, and I'm so thankful that people have a resource that they can turn to. And survivor to survivor, for those of you that may be survivors, one of the things we're dealing with truth about all these things. I'll never forget one time somebody came up to me, and I was right in the midst of trying to figure everything out, and they said, dude, I don't believe your story. I said, well, take a number. I don't either, because I don't want to believe that this is happening. There was a false idea that we just came up with this story. We want to tell people. Listen, survivors, we're the hardest ones it is to get to face the truth. And we have to go in holding tight to Jesus and saying, I want the truth and nothing else, Lord. And it's good to have people that like my friends here, that you can call, you can talk to, and that they'll be able to help you to stay close to Jesus and find the healing that he has for everybody who turns to him.
Mm-hmm.
Churches are not necessarily good at helping people that have been through some of these things. But what they are good at, many of them, hopefully, there's got to be one in your town that's good at teaching Jesus and teaching the Bible. Don't look for a perfect church. You will not find it. Okay. We can, we could talk about that, but there's no such thing as a perfect church. But there are churches that are Bible believing churches that are full of, broken people, flawed people, just like you and me. And they want to help and they care. And it's the Christians that are doing this stuff. Okay. Not the world, not the atheists, not the Satanists, not the occultists. It's the Christians that are trying to rescue the babies and the orphans and the widows. So, yeah. But folks, what an amazing time tonight talking with Greg and Vicki about this. And again, their websites, their links are in the show notes. You guys can go find all their books and their podcasts and all that. Guys, thank you so much for the support, for sharing the videos. You don't know who could benefit from one of these videos. And when you guys share them, it helps us get the word out, tweet it out, whatever. Give us a thumbs up. We appreciate that. Apparently that helps the algorithm. That's what I hear. And also there are those out there that support us financially. That means the world to us. We're not really good at asking for that kind of support. We don't really like to, but I'll be honest with you, we need it because we're on the road and we're out there. I traveled over an hour on Monday to meet somebody to minister to them and pray with them for 3 hours, and don't regret it. But it's something that goes on. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we don't really talk about because we're protecting people's privacy. Greg and Vicki spend countless hours helping people doing ministry and stuff. So, and you can support them through their websites, but we just appreciate the family that we have, and it means the world to us. So, I'm just going to do what I always do, encourage you, draw as close to the Lord as you possibly can. Greg, I want to let you say a few words, and I'll let Vicki have the final word tonight.
I want to thank you guys for letting me be part of this very important thing that you do. You can count on one hand at the end of the day who's going to go the distance with you, and you guys are definitely there, and I feel honored and privileged to be joining you here. So thank you, and my prayers are with you guys every day, and I thank God for everything that He's called you to do. And thanks for letting me join in tonight. It was really fun.
Cool, man. Good to have you.
Absolutely. It's totally mutual. Back at you, Greg.
You.
The thought that's just running through my head right now is there is no fear in love. And I think a reason why a lot of people don't believe survivor stories is because they become afraid. I don't want to get involved. Now I might be in Satan's target area, and I don't want to have the bad dreams. And there's no fear in love. And you might not be called or equipped to counsel a survivor, but you are called and equipped to love one. There's no fear in love.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Guys, thanks so much, and we will see you next time. All right. Bye-bye. Hey, folks, I just met the witches and Satanists, and they're going to allow me to do an interview with them, so let's see what happens.